It began on an ordinary day, the kind of day that looks exactly the same in every corner of the world, where people wake up, check the time, rush through routines, and step into their lives without questioning what might happen inside their minds, and Daniel was standing in a crowded subway station when anxiety arrived without invitation, without warning, and without reason that made sense, because one moment he was simply waiting, and the next his chest tightened as if something heavy had settled on it. His heart started racing as though he had just run from danger, his hands felt cold, his breath shortened, and a single frightening thought cut through everything else: what if I lose control right here? And nothing around him had changed. The platform was still there, people were still talking, trains were still coming and going, yet inside him a storm had begun. And if you are listening to this and feeling a quiet recognition, it is because anxiety does not belong to one story, one country, or one type of person. It appears in different forms but carries the same feeling everywhere, whether it finds you lying awake at night staring at the ceiling, sitting in an exam hall, standing before an important meeting, scrolling on your phone in silence, or smiling at a gathering while your mind feels like it is falling apart. And for years Daniel believed anxiety was something to fight, something to hide, something that meant he was weak or incapable, and like most people he tried to force calm. He told himself to stop thinking, to relax, to get a grip, but anxiety does not respond to force, because anxiety is not an enemy, it is a signal. And the first real change began the moment Daniel stopped treating it like a threat and started trying to understand it, because standing there on that platform, heart pounding, he remembered a simple idea he had once dismissed, something that sounded too small to matter. Name it. And instead of letting his mind spiral into thoughts like, I am dying, or I am losing control, or something is seriously wrong with me, he quietly said inside his mind, this is anxiety, and nothing dramatic happened. The world did not stop, the fear did not disappear instantly, but something subtle shifted. The panic paused as if it had been interrupted, because fear grows strongest in confusion and mystery, and when you name anxiety, you bring it into the light where it loses some of its power. And psychology explains why this works so effectively, because anxiety lives in the emotional part of the brain that reacts quickly and intensely, but when you label the emotion, you activate the thinking part of the brain that processes, understands, and regulates. And naming anxiety does not deny the feeling, it explains it, and explanation always reduces fear. And as Daniel stood there breathing slowly, repeating, this is anxiety, not danger, he noticed something important. His body began to follow his thoughts, his breath softened, his shoulders dropped slightly, and he realized that even though the feeling was uncomfortable, it was not actually harmful. And as the train arrived and people stepped forward, he understood something else that would later become crucial. His anxiety was not really about the subway, it was not about the crowd or the noise, it was about something invisible, something ahead of him, something that had not happened yet, because anxiety is a master of time travel. It pulls the mind into imagined futures and forces the body to react as if those futures are already real, and this happens to people everywhere, to the student worried about results that have not been announced, to the parent imagining worst-case scenarios about their child, to the worker fearing failure before it occurs, to the dreamer doubting themselves before they even begin. And Daniel noticed that his thoughts were not saying, I am unsafe right now. They were saying, what if something goes wrong? And that realization opened the door to the second mind technique that helped him beat anxiety naturally, because once you see that anxiety lives in the future, you can choose to return to the present. And Daniel asked himself a question that felt almost too simple but carried incredible power: is there a real danger in this exact moment? Not later, not tomorrow, not in imagination, but right now. And when he answered honestly, the answer was no, and that single moment of clarity grounded him. Because calm does not live in the future and it does not live in the past, calm only exists in the present moment. And Daniel brought his attention back to what was real, the feeling of his feet on the ground, the sound of voices around him, the rhythm of his breathing, and he said silently, right now, I am safe. And science explains why this works regardless of where you live or who you are, because anxiety is fueled by prediction and threat anticipation, and grounding interrupts that loop by sending signals of safety to the nervous system, reducing stress hormones and allowing the body to regulate itself. And this is why grounding techniques work across cultures and continents, because the human nervous system works the same way everywhere, and as Daniel walked away from the station that day, he did not feel perfect or fearless, but he felt different, lighter, more present, and most importantly, less controlled by anxiety. And days later anxiety returned again, because anxiety often does, this time not as a sudden physical rush but as a quiet voice in his mind before an important presentation, and that voice felt familiar, convincing, and personal. You cannot handle this, you will embarrass yourself, everyone will notice, and this voice exists everywhere in the world. It sounds different in different languages, but its message is always the same. It predicts failure and questions your ability to survive it. And for a long time Daniel believed that voice, until he learned the third mind technique that changed his relationship with anxiety entirely, changing the way he spoke to himself, because anxiety is not only a feeling, it is also a story, and the tone of that story determines how your body responds, and instead of arguing aggressively with the thought or trying to silence it, Daniel responded differently. He said calmly, "I can feel anxious and still do this," and that sentence did not remove the fear completely, but it removed its authority, because psychology shows that the brain rewires itself based on repeated patterns of thought and response, and when you speak to yourself with compassion instead of criticism, your nervous system begins to feel safer, and this technique works step by first noticing the anxious thought, then questioning whether it is a fact or a fear, and finally replacing it with a balanced and realistic response, not fake positivity, not denial, but honesty combined with reassurance. And over time something profound happened. Anxiety stopped being a signal to escape and became a signal to slow down and take care, and weeks passed, and anxiety still appeared sometimes, at night when everything was quiet, during stressful moments, or without any clear trigger, but it no longer decided Daniel's choices, it no longer controlled his life. And this is the truth that many people never hear: beating anxiety naturally does not mean eliminating anxiety completely. It means no longer being afraid of it, because when fear realizes it cannot control you, it loses much of its power, and if you are listening to this story and recognizing parts of yourself in it, remember this: you are not weak, you are not broken, your mind learned to protect you. It simply learned to stay on high alert for too long, and now it needs new instructions, and those instructions are simpler than you think. Name anxiety instead of fighting it, return to the present instead of following fear into the future, and change the way you speak to yourself instead of believing every anxious thought, and imagine what changes when anxiety no longer decides your actions, when you can enter moments without rehearsing disasters, when your body learns that it does not need to stay tense all the time, because calm is not the absence of anxiety, calm is the ability to meet anxiety without panic. And if you stayed with this story until now, take that as a sign. Try just one of these techniques today, notice what shifts inside you. Share this with someone who struggles in silence, leave a comment about what you felt while listening, and remember, no matter where you are in the world, feeling anxious does not mean you are failing at life, it means you are human, and learning how to calm your mind naturally is not giving up, it is taking your power back.